Throughout the Warhammer world, there are many nations of men which seek to stand against the tides of darkness constantly assailing them. The Empire unleashes destruction with black powder machines and foul sorceries, without thought of honor or gallantry. The southern nations of Tilia and Estalia bribe mercenary armies to defend them, as they are too weak of heart and arm to defend their own lands. It is only in fair Bretonnia that men have risen to be true heroes of the light, a nation founded upon the chivalry and valor of knights, who will always ride to cast back the armies of evil. However, of all the knights to fight in the name of the lady, one among them stands supreme as king. He is the Paladin Louen Leoncoeur, Lord of all Bretonnia and Duke of Caron. Louen is the son of the previous Duke of Caron, who was also the king before his son would eventually take over. Even from his youth, Leoncoeur always strove to follow the path of a true knight, completing his time of errantry as a prince much younger than any who had come before him. He was still but a young man when he took the questing vow and set out across the world in search of the Grail. The Prince of Caron rode throughout Bretonnia, slaying great beasts and casting back entire tribes of greenskins on his own. He displayed such courage and honor during this time that he earned the epithet Leoncoeur, meaning Lionheart. Eventually, he even undertook one of his greatest quests for that time of his life, and rode out to save the prophetess named Carolinda. Although the trial was difficult and he faced immense danger on his journey, the future king successfully cut down the foul enemies of the lady and rescued Carolinda. For his valor she granted him her blessing, resulting in his strength growing beyond that of mortal bounds. It was not long after this, however, that Louen would face the greatest challenge of his time as prince. As he rode past the ancient forest slumbering beneath the grey mountains, heavy clouds began to gather around him, as an eerie twilight covered the land in darkness. A green mist began swirling around him like a storm, collecting rapidly before the prince. As thunder boomed in the distance and lightning flashed, the mist coalesced into the form of a figure riding a snorting steed. The mysterious challenger held out his glowing sword in opposition to Louen, his eyes ablaze with fey light. The Green Knight had come. Realizing that the time had come to prove himself, Prince Louen shouted a prayer to the lady and charged the ghostly being before him. The Green Knight responded in kind, and the two met in the center of the field, strangely colored sparks flying as the two warriors exchanged blows. They passed by one another again and again, swords lashing out at superhuman speeds only to be deflected by shields or parried by the enemy blade. They seemed equally matched, until at last Leoncoeur was thrown from the saddle by a crushing blow from the Green Knight. With his shield dented and his sword arm sore, things seemed dire, but Louen refused to show any weakness before the Fey Knight. In a true display of chivalry, the Green Knight dismounted his own steed and marched forwards to continue the battle. Knowing he had to end the fight quickly, the prince charged forwards, and with a silent prayer to the lady upon his lips, brought his sword crashing down upon his foe. The ghastly being glanced up and brought his own blade up to parry, but in that instant Louen slammed his shield forward and bashed the Green Knight off balance. As his foe stumbled, the prince roared like a beast upon his heraldry and struck with his sword, cutting the Green Knight's head clean off. The world seemed to freeze in that instant, as the Fey warrior's helmet tumbled onto the ground at Luan's feet. As the prince fell backwards in exhaustion to consider his victory, a deep warmth filled his body as he felt something soft calling to him. As he began to focus on this gentle summons, he slowly stood up and glanced down at the Green Knight's head. Louen jumped back in surprise as he witnessed the Fey champion's body kneel down and pick up its own head. The ethereal being gave the prince a respectful bow, and Leoncoeur noticed a gleam of approval in his opponent's gaze. As Louen saluted his foe, the Green Knight turned and remounted his horse, riding off into the forest and vanishing as if he had never been. After his victory against the legendary champion of the lady, Louen the Lionheart rode forth on his quest to find the mysterious feeling calling him deep into the woods. He continued defending the innocent and striking down the wicked all across Bretonnia until the fateful day he discovered the origin of the call. Deep within one of the many forests covering his nation, Louen, one star-filled evening, found a calm lake shrouded in mist. Just being in the presence of this sacred place filled him with strength as a gentle warmth surrounded the night. As he stood before the reflective pool, something stirred deep within it, and on some instinct, he knelt before the figure rising out of the waters. After a few minutes, when Louen finally could resist no longer, he looked up. Tears streamed from his eyes as the prince beheld surely the most beautiful being in all of existence. Before him stood a woman of indescribable beauty that glowed with some godlike light. In her hands she held a grail with what looked like pure light made into liquid swirling within. With a gentle smile she offered it to the man kneeling before her, her eyes speaking of infinite kindness and wisdom. Honored beyond comprehension, Louen reached forward to gently grip the grail, bringing it to his lips and drinking of the lady's gift. As he drank, immense power blossomed within Leoncoeur, and he felt all of his wounds closing up in mere moments. Bones were reknit, bruises faded, and all of his worldly aches melted away. As he finished and released the grail, the prince looked up into the eyes of the lady and saw something else in her gaze, something he could not quite describe. The lady of the lake whispered something, and sank beneath the water once more, the mist swirling inward as if to form the portal to another world. In a matter of moments she was gone. A number of minutes passed before the prince stirred, rising slowly from the ground as he processed everything that had occurred. The knight who rose was no longer a mere human, however, but something far greater. Thus rose Louen Leoncoeur, the Grail Knight. Following this grand achievement, the prince returned back home to Couronne to visit his family and have his equipment tended to. His shield, having been blessed by the prophetess Carolinda, was carefully repaired and reinforced with strong materials. By this point, Louen had well entered his 30s, and he sought greater challenges in order to serve the lady. During the next 4 decades, Louen the Lionheart rode across his country, slaying monsters and casting down any who would cause the land or its people harm. He continued to earn more of the lady's favor with each grand victory, proving to his goddess that the paladin was a worthy mortal champion. Some rumors even suggest that during this time Louen grew so high in the lady's favor that she granted him a kiss, which may well be true as his power surpassed that even of other Grail Knights. However, the day did come in which Louen Leoncoeur had to return home, as his father had at long last passed away, and the throne sat empty. With his long list of accolades, unmatchable skill in battle, and the favor of the lady, it was clear who was to be the next monarch. Thus, in 2500, Louen was crowned King of Bretonnia by the Fey Enchantress herself. He proved to be a wise and capable king, first reinstating the traditional grand tournaments that had once been the largest festival in the land. Despite the various skilled and mighty warriors who gathered from Bretonnia and further afield, not a single person could defeat Louen at any contest. In matters of warfare, the new king was also a cunning general. He led his armies from the front upon the back of his loyal hippogriff, Biaki, cutting down foes and directing grand legions of knights. His first major victory was that at the Battle of Swamphold in 2507, in which King Loun's brilliant tactics crushed an entire orc Wa. He also purged the field surrounding Mouzilon of the undead, though rumor has it the king intends to cleanse and restore that city to its former glory, so that all of Bretonnia stands united once more. Leoncoeur has also cast back numerous invasions of the dark gods from the western seas, cutting down their foul champions in duels of legend. Throughout all of these trials, King Louen has remained a shining star of valor and honor for all Bretonnians to look to. He has never once broken his vows of chivalry, despite the demands of kingship, and hopes to lead his nation into a glorious future. The sons of Bretonnia are riding out beneath the king's banner, and all who oppose the lady shall tremble in fear, for her champion has come. Now that we have finished the story of Leoncoeur, let's go ahead and move on to his equipment. The symbol of the throne, the crown of Bretonnia, was placed upon Louen's head by the Fey enchantress Morgiana le Fay. It was forged long ago and given to the Bretonnians by the Lady of the Lake upon the coronation of Louis the Rash, son of Gilles le Breton. It was blessed by the goddess with a kiss, and ever since shines with a great light that will never diminish. The crown inspires all Bretonnians who see it to grand acts of valor as they feel the gaze of the Lady of the Lake upon them. Thus, any who fight alongside the king will never give in to panic or despair. In his right hand, the king wields the magical blade known as the Sword of Caron. This ancient heirloom of the Dukes of Caron was forged from the finest Bretonnian silverine, an extremely rare but powerful metal that is used to create Bretonnia's most godlike of weapons. It was quenched in the mirror pools of the mysterious Great Forest, and thus enchanted by the swirling magics found within. When this blade catches the sun's rays, it magnifies them to burning intensity, blinding Louen's foes as he smashes into them. To defend himself, King Louen Leoncoeur relies upon the shield he's wielded since he first became a knight, the Lion's Shield. Over the years, it has been reinforced by Bretonnia's greatest artisans, and blessed by numerous powerful prophetesses to become an artifact of legend. It defends Louen against physical attacks, but also renders virtually all magic thrown at him harmless. Many a sorcerer has cackled with glee as they unleash devastating spells, only to gape in horror as the king charged through unscathed without so much as flinching. Although it should be said that the king does not charge into battle on a horse like most of his warriors, but instead soars above the battlefield upon his loyal hippogriff named Biaki. This mighty beast was raised by Louen himself from birth, and is an extremely fierce creature upon the battlefield. Hippogriffs are dangerous monsters that are highly territorial and don't back down from any foe, making them ideal for the lords of Bretonnia. Biaki in particular is larger and swifter than most of its breed, capable of striking down noble griffins or foul wyverns before its foes can even swing. This beast is the most loyal companion any man could ask for, and will faithfully carry Louen into any battle, no matter how dire. Now that we've finished his equipment, let's go ahead and move forwards. When talking about the skills of Bretonnia's king, the first thing that should be examined is his skill as a warrior. Louen is an absurdly skilled fighter, besting any he's ever met at both the sword and lance, whether on foot, horseback, or soaring on Biaki. To have remained undefeated in the time he's been on the throne is terrifyingly impressive, especially given the sorts of warriors Bretonnia is able to raise on a regular basis. Whether elf, demon, or man, there are very few warriors alive who can take on the Lionheart. But that's only the beginning. Due to the lady's blessing and the lion's shield, King Louen is extremely tough. Leoncoeur is effectively immune to magic, as despite his goddess granting him plenty of protection, his shield only increases said protection to match the power of the magic coming at him. This means any spell capable of actually harming the king is immediately neutralized by his shield and bounces off harmlessly, allowing him to easily catch and slay wizards. However, that's only the tip of the iceberg for Leoncoeur. He is so high in the lady's esteem and has accomplished such amazing feats that Louen has ascended to become something greater than human. Should he be wounded, liquid light spills out in place of blood, and it heals in a mere matter of seconds. This tenacity has allowed the king to be hit with the most devastating of blows that would kill even the greatest of men, and be back in fighting shape in a moment or two. Truly, the King of Bretonnia is worthy of his station. With his great skills as a warrior, and wisdom granted from his absurdly long life, it should come as no surprise that King Louen is an exceptional general. Since taking the throne, he has never lost a battle, which is an amazing feat considering the sheer number of enemies Bretonnia faces on a regular basis. Soaring high upon Biaki, he finds vulnerable places to send his knights slamming into so that they may break through, circling back around to then tear into the enemy's rear. Of course, the king has turned many battles by charging into the fray himself, killing terrifying monsters, foul sorcerers, and cutting down the enemy's general. As with Karl Franz over in the Empire, Louen is an excellent diplomat. He has lived his entire life always adhering to the laws of chivalry, which has led to him earning the trust of all of his allies. Never once has the king used underhanded trickery or deceit to manipulate his neighbors, riding to their aid when asked and treating dignitaries with honor. No man has more valor than the Lionheart, and any who visit his court come to understand this quite quickly. One of the lesser-known traits about Leoncoeur that is rather important is the man's age. At his coronation, the king was very close to his 17th birthday, despite the fact he was definitely in his prime. The king is a human in name only, something too many of his foes don't realize until far too late. The final battle of King Louen occurred at the cataclysmic fall of Altdorf. The capital of the empire had been overrun by the legions of Grandfather Nurgle, and all hope was quickly fading. In the poor quarter of the city, the Temple of Shalia remained the only portion of Altdorf free from the taint of chaos. Yet this safety was under threat. Kugoth Plaguefather, the mightiest greater demon to serve the chaos god of plague, and Festus the Leech Lord, his greatest mortal champion, were marching upon the temple. All seemed lost until a warrior's challenge rang out from above, causing Kugoth to turn and locate the source. Faster than the eye could follow, the King of Bretonnia speared out of the heavens and slammed his lance into the breast of the greater demon, his hippogriff's claws slashing away decaying flesh. But Kugoth was more difficult to kill than any normal monster, grabbing onto the lance and impaling it, and using it to hurl Louen and his mount through the roof of the nearby Temple of Shalia. Luminous blood hung to the edges of where the noble hero had smashed through the building, but of the king and his hippogriff there was no sign. Satisfied his foe was dealt with, Plaguefather gurgled with mirth and continued his advance towards the temple's courtyard. A titanic battle continued in the streets of Altdorf between men, demons, and the undead. Kugoth surged through the press of bodies, crushing screaming souls beneath his bulk, and kicking away those standing in his path. Soon, he loomed over the huddled sisters of Shalia, and the thin line of state troopers attempting to defend them. Amused, the greater demon raised his massive rusted blade. Suddenly, Louen Leoncoeur burst out from the temple, his sword glowing with holy wrath. As Kugoth brought his weapon down like a corrosive meteor, the king deftly wrapped his shield arm around a priestess and casted her aside onto a nearby stretcher. The ground where she had been standing was obliterated an instant later as the giant sword impacted the flagstones. Louen surged forward, boosting off of a table that had been functioning as an operating bench, and leapt in the air towards his foe. The king's blade sliced through the air and with a two-headed grip cleaved straight through Kugoth's fatty flesh, causing the lance wound to tear open even further. As the rotten skin split apart, the black pus-filled heart of the great unclean one was exposed. Enraged, Plaguefather turned his head in a large scoop, catching the Bretonian in his antlers and hurling Louen into the air. Leoncoeur seemed suspended at the height of his flight, before Kugoth's massive sword slammed into the king's midsection, sending him crashing into the nearby statue of Magnus the Pious. Golden liquid trickled from the knight's wounds as he stood once more, his shield glowing with azure light as he prayed to the lady for strength. The king strode forward towards his obese enemy, bracing as the massive blade came crashing down again. Louen took the powerful blow on his shield, staggered by the crushing impact. He used the momentum to tuck into a tight roll, dodging beneath the demon's backswing as it smashed the statue's grand podium to splinters. Louen Leoncoeur charged forwards, cutting down any lesser demons that tried to bar his path. His sword glowed with blinding light as he cleaved towards Plaguefather, absorbing the light from the blazing comet above. The great unclean one covered his eyes with a massive arm, rearing back as if the light burned him. At this moment, Byakhee leapt out of the temple's shattered dome, crashing into Kugoth and tearing away large chunks of his revolting flesh. As the demon roared in agony, Festus the Leech Lord finally arrived at his side and hurled a glass full of troll's bile at the hippogriff's head. The burning vomit caused the beast to stagger back, scraping at its face in pain. Plaguefather took advantage of this reprieve, grabbing Byakhee from the sky and hurling it against the ground, before snapping its spine with an overhead swing of his massive sword. The majestic mount of the king flailed in agony before finally growing still. Enraged beyond words, Louen charged forwards and leapt through the air with a display of agility that would shame even the most dexterous of elves. He gouged the sword of Coron all the way to the hilt in Kugoth's throat, causing the greater demon to bawl in pain. Plaguefather stumbled backwards, flailing in an attempt to dislodge the king, but Leoncoeur grimly held on even as his blood streamed into the gaping wound in the daemon's chest. It was then that Kugoth realized he had doomed himself, for every cut and wound upon the Grail Knight's body had caused his holy blood to spill out now into the demon's very heart, which was like acid to him. Plaguefather screamed in agony as the golden liquid ate him alive from the inside, continuing to stagger away from the temple of Shalia. As he attempted to reach for Louen, the king wrenched his blade all the way through Kugoth's throat, causing the demon to wheeze and lose his balance. As the monster came crashing down, the remains of the statue of Magnus tipped over, slamming onto the great unclean one and pinning him in place. Second by agonizing second, the demon bubbled away into nothingness, until all that remained of him was a simmering stain. King Louen Leoncoeur stood bleeding but proud, in place of where the former emperor's statue had been. He paused for only a moment before raising his blade and charging out into the fray once more. Now that we have his famous battle out of the way, let's go ahead and move on what happened to the king during the end times. At the very beginning of the end times, so the prequel, Louen battled against his bastard son, Malobad. It's not clear who the mother of Malobad is, also known as Maldred in some different parts of the lore. All that is known is that he was a son from somebody. It might have been Morgiana Le Fay, it might have been some other random character. That part of the text is not very well covered, as Bretonnia never received any books beyond 6th edition. In the end, though, son and father battled against one another, and due to the fact that he had been turned into a vampire, thanks to the efforts of Archon the Black, Louen lost to his son and was cut down and thrown into the mud. He was, however, saved by the Six Sisters, which are a group of prophetesses that follow the lady. They spirited him away to a mysterious place where, according to the end times, the lady dwelt. There he was healed over the course of the beginning of the end times, and eventually returned to see his nation almost in utter ruins. With Gilles le Breton returned as king, the founder of Bretonnia, Louen took on the position of High Paladin and was lost for a time. He didn't have direction. He had no calling. But then the Empire called for aid. For the 3 armies of Grandfather Nurgle, the vanguard, the true vanguard of Archaon's force was descending upon Altdorf. Leoncoeur rode out and fought at the fall of Altdorf, where he would slam into the flanks of the Chaos Army surrounding the city. He brought with him pretty much every single remaining knight in Bretonnia, and it was a huge army. And they ended up pretty much obliterating a good portion of the Chaos Army and started fighting their way towards the city. Realizing that the true battle for Altdorf's soul was going on within the city, Leoncoeur took off from his host and led his Pegasus Knights and a few other Hippogriff Riders towards the Temple of Shalia, where he battled Kugoth Plaguefather, who he ended up killing. Which Kugoth Plaguefather is the most powerful greater demon that one of the Chaos Gods has at his disposal, so that was an amazing feat. After that, he battled Festus the Leech Lord, and that battle was very brief. Leoncoeur struck him in the belly after doing some kind of crazy agile stuff, and had Festus been anyone except Festus, it would have killed him instantly. But Festus was empowered by Nurgle due to a bunch of other various reasons, and was essentially turning into a demon prince. And so because he was on the border of mortal and demon, he was too demonic for Leoncoeur to just kill with his blade, but he was still not daemon enough for Leoncoeur's blood to kill him. So he was kind of in a perfect position not to die, and he killed Leoncoeur and beheaded him. Thankfully, in the name of revenge, because Vlad von Karstein actually was quite fond of King Leoncoeur, Vlad, who had been fighting in the streets during this entire fight, charged forwards, stabbed Festus. Festus then killed Vlad, but did not realize that Vlad could come back to life. So when Vlad rushed forward again, Vlad impaled him with a piece of wood, and the same regenerative power that had made Festus immune to Vlad and Leoncoeur's attacks ended up being Festus's undoing, because Vlad took a gamble by stabbing him with a piece of wood, because what happened essentially was that the wood picked up the regenerative powers and turned into this huge Drakewald tree, and because Festus had been impaled in the center of his body, he was literally torn apart and bursted like some kind of overripe berry, because, it was like if you took a balloon and stabbed it right in the center. So Festus died a horrible, agonizing death, which he totally deserved, and was not able to ascend into demonhood. Serves him right. And that was the end of King Louen Leoncoeur. He died defending Altdorf's final piece of the city, and he succeeded in doing that. Alright, and with all of that out of the way, we can go ahead and talk about the King of Bretonnia in Total War Warhammer. He is easily one of my favorite characters in the Warhammer lore. He's a ton of fun. Obviously, for his quest battles, I imagine they will revolve around his magic items, being the Crown of Bretonnia, the Sword of Caron, the Lion Shield, and his Hippogriff Biaki. They could probably go beyond that if they wanted to, in that in 5th edition he used to have a magic set of armor, a standard, and a lance. But all of these items no longer existed in 6th edition, which is the most recent edition that Leoncoeur exists in. So we'll have to see if CA needs to give him more stuff, but honestly those 4 items are probably enough. He also has an army rule. Well, then again, the Lady's Blessing could count as his 5th if they needed that. But his army rule, which would be like his racial trait if you took him, or his faction trait, is that Leoncoeur makes knights cheaper to take. In tabletop, this is reflected as he makes questing knights count as core units, so they can fill up the base part of your army, and he does something to make real knights easier to take. So in Total War Warhammer, this could easily translate to him having an easier time recruiting knights, just as we've seen Ungrim Iron Fist has an easier time recruiting slayers and things of that nature. I would also expect that if you take Leoncoeur, or Louen Leoncoeur, that he has a bonus to diplomacy, because he is very well noted as being one of the most loyal allies and the most honest people at face value in the Warhammer universe. He doesn't do sort of backhanded tactics like Karl Franz or Balthazar Gelt or any of those other people out there. And he's much more reliable in a sense that we can understand than like the dwarves. There's actually a famous story, well not famous, but there's a story about Louen Leoncoeur told by Thorgrim, the High King of the Dwarves, in which the two of them teamed up on a bandit king's fortress, and when they took it, they lined up a bunch of people who had been forced to fight for the bandit king because he had members of their families under threat, or he would threaten to kill them if they tried to run, all this stuff, and King Leoncoeur begged Thorgrim to let these people go because they were innocent and they were forced to fight against their will. And Thorgrim basically calls them a beardling and executes all these people, telling him that if these people didn't want to die, then they should have not stained their honor by fighting for a bandit in the first place. But that shows kind of a difference between, both Thorgrim and Louen are good guys, but Louen is much more of a good guy in the sense that humans understand, while Thorgrim's a good guy in a purely dwarven sense. So basically, in Total War Warhammer, I would be super pleased if he had the knight bonus, making knights cheaper to recruit, or maybe gave you access to them earlier, or whatever, or maybe bigger units, whatever it needs to be. His various items. I really hope that especially his shield makes him super resistant against magic. That's a pretty unique trait to Leoncoeur. He comes with regeneration, which is super nice. So like how trolls regenerate and are able to recover health very quickly, so is Leoncoeur, due to the Lady's Blessing. It'd be a bit weird if we had to get it as an item, but it's already kind of weird, some of the items that we have to get for various characters, so we'll just deal. But yeah, very excited. I am so glad he's already in the game. If you couldn't tell, I used an image in this video from a still photo somebody took of when, during the developer walkthrough, they're soaring over Bretonnia. You could briefly see him, and someone took a really great picture of that I used in this video on the, I think it was on Reddit. And he looks phenomenal. He looks so great. And it's pretty sprightly for a man in his 70s, isn't he? But I am quite glad that he's in the game. I don't know how long it's going to be before he's playable. It could be a free LC or a DLC at release. It could be a few weeks, a few months after release. I hope it's free LC very quickly after. I hope that's a big surprise that they give the community to say, thanks everyone for following along and everything. Obviously, they do not have to do that by any means, and I would not think less of them if they didn't. But it would be so wonderful to just have Bretonnia just thrown into the mix. That way we'd have 3 good guy races, being the Bretonnians, the Empire, and the Dwarves, and 3 villainous races, being the Vampire Counts, Chaos Warriors, and the Greenskins. But that's pretty much everything I have on Louen Leoncoeur. I thank you all for watching very, very much. I hope you survived my horrible pronunciations of the various French words in this video, or French names, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I apologize that the 7 days of lore were not the 7 consecutive days of lore, but we're back on it. A few of my books got left behind while I was traveling, and so I was sort of up in the air with a couple projects. So we're back on it. This was day 3 of the 7 days of lore for those of you who may not have been counting. So there are still 4 more projects coming very soon, probably the next 4 days, and if not, at least the next week at the latest, for the last video. So look forward to the next 4 videos coming up. Hope you guys have a great night. Thanks for watching.